Alright, here's another Dvadasamsa. This one's interesting in that it has two very obviously strong planets, the Moon and Saturn, and then some obviously weak planets, namely the Sun, Jupiter, who are sleeping in a natural enemy sign, and then Mars, who's actually debilitated. So we see right away there's some extremes in the Dvadasamsa, some really strong and then some really weak planets. Dignity-wise, we've got Moon's exalted, Mars is debilitated, one Mula Trikona, one friend, couple neutrals. So it's there's some extreme weak and strong planets in this Varga. So let's see how it all works out. Most important house is the 12th house, which is ruled by Mercury. Mercury is in a natural friends or natural neutral sign ruled by Mars. And it's in a water sign, which means any enemies aspecting Mercury are only going to thirst Mercury. They're not going to starve it. In the Rashi chart, Mercury is not conjunct anyone, so we want to eliminate that possibility. And the planets that aspect is the Moon. The Moon is a really strong moon because it's exalted. It's also strong because it's at the very beginning of Taurus, in the first degree in the Dvadasamsa, which strengthens it. So the Moon is putting a lot of thirst into Mercury. Jupiter's aspecting as a neutral and Saturn as a neutral. So this is a very thirsty Mercury. Not a good Mercury, but not a very bad one. Now in the context of this person's ancestral background, there's no negativity from that because it's not starved, but there's no abundance whatsoever. There's nothing inherited, there's nothing received in general. It's like if they didn't have the ancestors that they had, it wouldn't make any difference in this person's life. Okay? There's nothing that's really benefited them. It's not a good 12th bhava. You want some good benefits from your ancestors, you know. This person doesn't get that. Okay? Now, you'll see that Mercury in the Rashi chart is in its exaltation. So this person's going to get, that Mercury's going to give the person a curious mind, a very capable mind of making decisions. And Mercury in Virgo makes very practical, detached decisions. I mean, it makes best decisions because it's the best move in the game. But over here, we see that Mercury's falling into Scorpio. Now, Mercury in Scorpio is not anything like Mercury in Virgo. Mercury in Scorpio makes decisions that are more emotionally based. It's curious about things that somehow touch an emotional chord with them. They tend to play by the rules that help them get ahead. So it's a complete different Mercury. And so when you meet this person, you're not going to just feel a totally exalted Mercury. It's not a purely exalted Mercury. It's a Mercury that has a Scorpio quality. And that's not necessarily a bad quality. But what makes it suffer somewhat is that the Moon aspecting Mercury does hurt it. And it makes things, mercurial things such as friendships less fulfilling because the person is not enough about the relationship. Mercury, it's a little bit more about the person, the Moon. Okay? And then that's not because of the Dvadasamsa per se. That happens in the Rashi chart. The Moon is aspecting Mercury there. But this person's Mercury is not as great as you expected it to be. If they're hurt by a friend and the friend calls them or emails them, they're not going to rush right out to communicate with them. If they're emotionally upset at that person for something that happened, they probably won't get back to them or something, So there's not as much effort made in friendships with this person if there's something emotional about it. If they're invested in it emotionally or if they don't get their needs met. So it's not a pure Mercury for this person. Rules of friendship say that if your friend hurts you, but then they call back and they try to make amends or they, want to communicate with you, you are open to communication. But when the Moon aspects Mercury and either thirsts or starves it, that inclination won't be there so much. And that's one of the situations this person had. Anyway, that's getting a little bit involved, but the main point is Mercury's in Scorpio gives this person a very much more a Scorpio type Mercury a more emotionally centered Mercury than what we normally expect by seeing Mercury in Virgo. Okay. And to have the most fun in playing a game, you don't want to get emotionally involved, right? That's why Mercury does so good in Virgo. He's not emotionally invested or involved. He plays by the rules to get the highest score possible. Mercury in Scorpio, though, gets emotionally involved. And so they won't make as good decisions as a Mercury in Virgo person does in the context of what they get in the end. But they'll do it because they feel they need that more. Okay? All right. So Mercury's not a great 12th lord. Now, the 12th bhava, fortunately, is aspected by the exalted moon, which is going to help it. It's aspected by Jupiter, a neutral sign, so it's not going to help or hurt it, and by Saturn in Mula Trikona, okay, who is helping it a lot. So we have two good, dignified planets influencing the 12th compared to one bad. So that means the person's ancestors had some, great deeds behind them. But with that bad 12th lord, that thirsty 12th lord, those great things their ancestors have achieved and done aren't things that will satisfy this person. As a result, they don't really do much with it. Like I said, they don't do anything with it. As always, the Lord is more important because that's your consciousness actually getting involved with the thing that it rules. So it's a good 12th house, though, all in all. Okay, 12th cusp is also joined Mercury. Mercury's in a friend sign. So it's a good 12th house. So there's some noble ancestral karmas, but not things that are of their need and liking due to that thirsty Mercury. The other important bhava lord is the 9th bhava lord. And here's when it gets interesting. Mars, the 9th bhava lord, is sleeping. He's debilitated. Not only is he sleeping, he's very close to the sun. You can see he's just 5 degrees apart from the sun. He is combust. He's in the very last degree of Leo in the Rashi chart. So he's very mrita, or dead. Doesn't have a lot of power. He's at the end of the Dvadasamsa as well, which means he has less power. He's getting close to the end. It's not a good Mars. He's agitated by the sun. Luckily, the sun is sleeping in the Dvadasamsa, but it's still a combust Mars, and a planet that's combust is hidden. It's invisible. It's set. So a combust planet is going to, in the end, produce a whole lot less. Not a good 9th lord, just as itself. Now, the 9th lord, fortunately, is debilitated in a friend sign, and the moon is exalted. So the moon is helping Mars a lot. Otherwise, this person likely wouldn't have had any parenting of any mention whatsoever. Jupiter's a friend of Mars, but he's sleeping and can't help. Saturn's an enemy, a neutral Mars, so he's not going to matter. So it ends up actually being a delighted Mars, which means good parenting. Thanks to the moon, though, and not due to Mars itself. Okay? Well, this person's, and also notice just one other thing that's important here, is that the Lord of Mars is sitting in the 8th sign from the Lagna, which can make breaks and change it, even though it's strong. Then Mars happens to rule the 4th house, the house of the mother, as well. It also happens to rule the 12th lord, Mercury. So this Mars is a key planet in this person's life, in this person's Dvadasamsa. And it is thankfully delighted by the moon, but completely problematical by itself. What that means is that there's definitely problems with the parenting and problems with the mother. Why the mother? Because Mars rules the 4th. The moon, which rules Mars, and the other planet of mother, is in the 8th house, the house of breaks and changes. The 8th sign is the worst, from the ascendant, is the worst place to have the moon. Even if it's exalted, there's going to have been something unexpected happened. Okay? then the Mars is a bigger planet of mother, according to the Gemini principle, because Mars and Moon are mother. Mars is the mother in the context of what she does for the family. Okay? And Mars is stronger than the Moon in the chart because it's conjunct the planet, the Moon is alone. So according to Gemini, Mars is stronger, not that he's going to do better, but in the sense of importance. He's a more important planet of the mother than the Moon. And that carries through in all the Vargas. So, and then Mars is sleeping. So we have issues with the mother. And that's exactly what happened. The mother wasn't a capable parent. She had emotional problems to the degree that she couldn't raise the kids. She was able to bear them, and then she had several kids over, about a 12-year period. She had kids with her husband, but she couldn't really do well with raising them all. And when this girl was like 12 or 13, the mother finally becomes totally incapable, and this girl pretty much takes care of most of the parenting of her siblings. So she really takes a big role in raising her siblings as the eldest kid in the family. So we can see the parenting role was a giant mess. The mother just wasn't capable, and it was a big mess. Now, lots of times we like to say, well, ninth house is the father, but ultimately the ninth house is parenting, and when it's connected to the fourth house, like Mars rules the fourth too, it's more likely to, or Mars, the Karaka mother, it's more likely to be the mother. But then there's some good stuff. Mars has some delight to it. So eventually her father remarried a woman who is very poised, very focused, a more, Moon and Taurus type person, okay, like you'd expect. So eventually the person had some more, serious parenting, okay, that they could count on, but it's not a good ninth Baba, okay, or ninth Baba Lord. It's not terrible. Luckily, it has that moon, and the whole reason that this, the mother's problems were more difficult is because of the 8th house moon, and moon ruling that Mars. Okay, so in the end, things do work out okay, but the 8th house involved with the moon is always going to create something painful. In this case, something painful that made her strong because the moon's exalted. And that's very true. When you see this person, you say, well, they got moon in Aquarius. Then over here in the Dvadasamsa, they got moon in Taurus. You'll have no doubts this person has a moon in Taurus nature. They don't have a moon in Aquarius nature. This is stronger because that's a stronger dignity for the moon. And they very much feel like a moon in Taurus person. They have that poise, that mental focus, that quick ability to discern what feels right to them and what they need. They don't have the, moon and Aquarius quality as much as killing themselves for other people, overworking. They're more balanced than that. Moon in Aquarius can just overwork, push itself too hard, get caught up in fixing things all the time instead of moving forward, things like that. They're both stubborn, but they're stubborn for different reasons. Moon in Aquarius is stubborn in regards to what it thinks it has to do. Moon in Taurus is strong-willed in what it wants to do. And so this person is more inclined to do what they want to do to help benefit their life than what they feel they always have to do, which is the moon in Aquarius. Now they do have moon in Aquarius, so they have that, but it's definitely colored by this moon in Taurus. Okay? Now that's, those qualities in some ways can be supportive. The moon is good in both charts and all in all. And of course, from the Rashi, the moon's in Taurus, which is the 4th house from Aquarius. If the moon was in the 6th, 8th, or 12th from the moon in the Rashi, then there could be some more turbulence of trying to juggle incompatibilities. But in the 4th, it becomes a really constructive, nice thing for it, okay? All right. Okay, so we don't see ideal parenting. The ninth bhava itself is influenced by the sun, who's in a neutral sign, by helpful moon, Mars, who's not going to hurt it because he's the Lord, by Mercury, who's helping, by Jupiter, who's indifferent, by Venus, who's helping, and okay, and that's it. So it's a good ninth bhava. And so they had parents the whole time. But that debilitated ninth lord basically indicates debilitated, stressful parenting. That's luckily saved through the moon. Okay? And then also look at the moon as always yourself. And so that showed that this person, in lots of respects, bailed out the parenting by doing it herself, which is very true. So obviously the third house is going to be really interesting here. The third house falls in Libra, and because again, the third house is an important house in the Dvadasamsa. Third house falls in Libra. It's helped by Moon, hurt by Mars, helped by Mercury, helped by Venus, and helped by Saturn. And then Jupiter conjuncts the third cusp in the Rashi. Jupiter's in a neutral sign, so it's indifferent. So a lot of things hurting that. There's just a little bit of help from the moon. Sun's indifferent. Mercury helps, but not as much as Mars is hurting. So it's not a good third house. Okay? And again, the third house is the parenting that takes into account all the sibling influences. And this is where the real difficulty comes in. It's a difficult third house. It's the worst house we've looked at. The third lord, let's look at that too, is Venus. Venus is aspected by indifferent sun, by its enemy moon. So it gets starred by the moon. And then it gets helped by Saturn, to 37 points as a friend. So Venus is about 50-50, starts out in a natural neutral sign. So he has an equal amount of delight and starvation. It's a mediocre lord with a bad third bhava. So the bad third bhava is the fact that when it came to parents influencing the sibling life, it really didn't happen. You know, the parents didn't really work towards the siblings having a better time together. There was very frustrating things happening at times, largely due to the bad aspect of Mars, the most harmful planet to it, which is the mother, the lack of mothering. And of course, like I said, this person basically raised their siblings. Okay? And it's interesting how the first house and third lord are both ruled by this decent Venus. The third lord is trashed. Okay? The third house is trashed. But the lord is decent, and the lord is the same as the Logna lord. So this person, readily identified with their siblings and taking care of themselves, they took care of their siblings. And what's also interesting, if you look at the first house is in much better shape, all in all. The first house has a strong aspect of exalted moon. It has an aspect of a strong Saturn. It's hardly hurt by Mars. It is conjunct Venus in the Rashi. Venus is in a natural friend sign in the Dvadasamsa. So it's a great Lagna. The third house is bad, the Lagna is great. So this was the shining sibling in their family. And it's very much true. From that, this is the most accomplished, capable of this family. They're ones who naturally had to take care of people. They had the ability. Look how bad the siblings are in this chart. They're the one who have had the most success in their lives, that are the most accomplished in their life. And we see that because we have an excellent first house in the Dvadasamsa, which again will modify the first house in the Rashi chart, because we can look at all bhavas in the Dvadasamsa. But a bad third house, and the third house is the parental influences upon the children. It's bad. The third lord is good, and that's her as well. So the third lord being good, because it's also the first lord, shows the siblings sort of making the most of things effectively, because Venus is in good shape, luckily. But with her really being the best of them all, because the Lagna is in such good shape compared to the third bhava. Okay? The other important bhava is the sixth bhava. The sixth bhava is, sixth bhava lord is Jupiter, who's sleeping. He's aspected by his friend Sun, who's sleeping, who can't help. By his friend Moon, who can help a little bit, it's only a 5-point aspect. By Mars, who's sleeping. By his enemy Mercury, who's going to starve him. By enemy Venus, who's going to starve him. So this is a starved Jupiter. It's not a good sixth lord, which means this person will have to struggle in life to fulfill their ancestral debts. Lo and behold, Jupiter is a karaka of children. Jupiter also rules the fifth cusp. So this person is going to have struggles with their Jupiter things in order to pay off the debts of their ancestor. And of course, they dealt with the children that were their siblings, but that's not that fifth house. That's the third house. Then they also had their own child, which they really didn't want to have kids because they knew how much work it was from experience. They figured they reared enough, took care of it, did enough babysitting as a kid. But their husband really wanted to have kids, so eventually they went and had kids. And unfortunately, eventually they got divorced, and now she's a single mom. And you can see a lot of that karma coming through this Dvadasamsa. That was ancestral karma that she had to burn. You see the bad sixth lord, a key lord, which also rules the fifth house in the Dvadasamsa, and it's starved. So it's like real hard work with children. Jupiter is the karaka of husband as well. Mars, the other weak planet, Mars is debilitated, rules the seventh house, the husband. And so we don't have really great ancestral karma for those two things. Mars is not that bad because Mars is ruled by that exalted moon, and that's a friend. But the Jupiter thing makes the life with children difficult and hard for her. So it's not a good sixth lord. Sixth bhava gets helped a little by Moon, gets trashed by Mars to 56 points. Mercury helps it, luckily. Venus helps it, and Saturn helps it. Let's see, let's add that up. Mars is trashed it to 56 points. And we got 40, 51, 64 points of good aspects. But a debilitated planet is going to hurt something much more than a planet in a neutral or friend sign, than a friend sign or great friend sign will help. So overall, it becomes a 2/3 approximately bad sixth house, and only 1/3 good. So it's a bad sixth bhava. So this person really has to struggle in this lifetime to pay their ancestral karmas. There's some difficult ancestral karmas they have to pay, which makes their life more of a struggle, unfortunately. Okay? And that struggle started to a large degree in Rahu Jupiter Dasha. Okay? Actually, it was Rahu Jupiter. And you can also see how from Rahu in the Rashi, Jupiter's in the 8th. Makes things more difficult in your life when the Dasha Lord's in the 6th, 8th, or 12th, or the Anta Lord's in the 6th, 8th, or 12th from the Dasha Lord. So this is a chart that has some really strong planets at first glance, but also has enough weak planets to create some difficult situations. Most important planets, of course, are Ketu and Rahu. Ketu is going to give the results of Mars and Venus. Venus, because Ketu is conjunct Venus in the Rashi chart. Venus is in decent shape. In the decent Lajitadya Vashta, mediocre Lajitadya Vashta in the Dvadasamsa, if I remember right. It's hurt by the moon and helped by Saturn relatively equally. So it's helped by its friend Saturn but hurt by moon. So it's an okay Venus. Then Ketu is going to give the results of its lord Mars. And Mars we've seen is sleeping, but, brought back to life by his friend the moon. So it's a decent Ketu, but a stressful Ketu. Why is it stressful? Because Ketu is going to give the results of Mars, and Mars is debilitated. And a debilitated planet is always going to be stressful. even if it works out in the end. So again, stressful ancestral karma in general from this person, which means their ancestors have had these funny, stressful situations in their life too. And then they're continuing that ancestral theme. The other important planet is Rahu. It's not conjunct any planets in the Rashi. It's going to give the results of Venus because it's in Taurus. And Venus we've seen is just so-so. So they're not great Rahu and Ketus in the Dvadasamsa. It's mediocre pretty much all around. So there's nothing really wonderful ancestrally coming through, but it prevents worst case situations at least. It's when Ketu and Rahu get trashed and their lords are trashed that situations can come in that have some really dire ancestral karmas taken into effect. But there's enough hardships in this chart to see some areas of difficulty. Okay? Now the best planet, dignity-wise, is the moon. And the moon is aspecting that 12th bhava, luckily, and enriching their ancestral talents and abilities and capabilities. Even though those direct connections that they have are not that interesting to them because Mercury's thirsty, so they're not really what they need, unfortunately. Okay, so interesting Dvadasamsa with an interesting story because of some extreme planets. But overall, there's a lot of strength in this Dvadasamsa. Look at the strong moon. It's a wonderful moon. Look at the strong Lagna. It's a wonderful Lagna. That's the path you're on in life. And, this person's focused and solid and secure on their path. And part of that's shown because of the good first house in the Dvadasamsa. It helps that. The good first house in the Dvadasamsa helps her congenital health. A trashed first house and trashed first Lagna Lord in the Dvadasamsa will indicate, a weak physical inherited tendencies. This person has a great body. They don't have, they're healthy, and that's one of the reasons why. And of course, that's going to be indicated in the Rashi too. But the Dvadasamsa will modify that. A couple of modern astrologers have written medical astrology books, and they always include the Drekana and the Dvadasamsa. Those are two important Vargas for your health. Now we know the Trimsamsa is the Varga of disease, and so that's similar to health, just the other side of the coin. But health itself, we can get a lot of health built up in the Rashi, the Drekana, and the Trimsamsa, and Dvadasamsa. So this helps her health. Also, the fact that this person has a nice strong moon shows the mental strength. This person has been through some very difficult things, and whenever they come to me and they've really gone through something, they're just so poised and about it, like you'd expect the moon in Taurus to be. They're just so strong-minded and poised about it, and they don't let their world fall apart. They're focused and they look at the things they can do to make things work. So you really see that nice, strong moon in Taurus. Moon in Aquarius will really tend to feel the burdens more and get grumpy about it or upset about it more or cuss about it while it digs in and works. The moon in a Taurus just maintains an equilibrium even when, things are just falling down all around them. So it really pays to look at the dignities of planets in the Dvadasamsa. Another interesting thing about this person is that, they have Mars and Leo in the Rashi chart, which is a really independent place where a person, Mars and Leo is like a general that can just haul and do what's necessary. And when there's problems, they just tackle them, and they just take charge and tackle them. And they have that quality to some degree, but at the same time, then the Mars is debilitated in the Dvadasamsa. And that quality is just completely toned down. And you really feel a much, much softer, much more humble Mars than you would expect from Mars and Leo. And there's, that Mars and Leo is not so ready to fight. The moon causes them to always maintain their equilibrium and look for the good possibilities. But when it comes to actually tackling that problem and digging in, you really see the Mars in Cancer effect. They need some support. They need some good advice. They need their hands held. And then they just really take care of it, which you'd expect an exalted moon to do, because moon's really social and wants assistance and servants and, people to help things with in general. Whereas Mars is an independent fixer, just goes in there and takes control and does what it needs to do. And this person doesn't have that quality very well defined for a Mars and Leo person, due to Mars being in Cancer. Now, they've got Saturn in Gemini, which is a decent place for Gemini, a place of average strength. But the truth is, this person is a lot stronger than that. A strong Saturn, you can feel in a person. You can feel that strength. You can see that hardiness. Saturn gives hardiness, is the word for it, the ability to just suffer. And Saturn in Aquarius shows that ability is much greater than we normally would expect from a Saturn in Gemini person. Okay? So it really pays a look at these dignities in the Dvadasamsa. Hopefully you all have been looking at them in your own charts and seeing how, wow, this is making a big difference. I know my chart's totally true. A planet that's weak in the Roshni, I look in the Dvadasamsa, I go, oh, no wonder that planet's I can actually use that planet with some punch when I need to. Okay, this person has a lot of planets in the Yama Dvadasamshas. Mercury, one of the key planets. Jupiter, the other key planet, rules the 6th. Venus, which rules the 3rd. So the 12th, 6th, and 3rd Lord. 3 of the important Bhava Lords, everything except the 9th Bhava Lord, are in Yama Dvadasamshas. Okay? Again, that's the god of death and transitions and maintaining discipline to struggle against odds and being in, controlling situations so they don't go adverse. And that's what this parental ancestral influence was like for this person. It was a struggle. Things were terminated. There's huge transitions and transformations, all qualities of Yama. It's very much a Yama-type parenthood. And when you get a lot of planets, especially the important planets in Yama Dvadasamshas, that indicates right away a more difficult, stressful upbringing and parental situation with transitions and, involved. Okay, so difficulty thing. Yama is a more difficult Dvadasamsha. Now, difficult doesn't mean bad results. It just means it's a more struggle, a greater struggle and hardship. Then they have a couple Haya Dvadasamshas. The Moon and Mars are in the Haya Dvadasamshas, which is really interesting because this person's experience from all this, especially in respect to their mother, was they really just took a lot of knowledge from it all, which is what the Haya Dvadasamsha is about. So this family experience, what they took out of it, that nice moon, was this, this sort of great understanding about family situations. So the minute they start talking about their upbringing and childhood, it's like they just seem much more mature and knowledgeable than about when they talk about other things. And they relate that to both their mother figures, their true mother who had issues, but which helped her gain a lot of understanding because of, having those issues in her life, and her second mother, who was a really wise woman, that she gained it in. Okay? Then, not a lot with Ganesha Dvadasamsha. Saturn's in the Ganesha Dvadasamsha. He's not a really important planet, though. He doesn't rule any Bhava cusp in the Dvadasamsha. He's just not very important. The Lagna is in a Ganesha Dvadasamsha, and so that's somewhat important. And so, this person itself has taken an original new path in the context of their ancestral background. The field they're in is something that's unique to what their ancestors before them have done. So there is that element of Ganesha. And again, the Lagna was a good, strong point in this chart, which amplifies those qualities. Rahu and Ketu on the Ashwi Dvadasamshas, which are the Dvadasamshas like to maintain things that they were given. But Ketu and Rahu aren't really in great enough shape to give anything great, unfortunately. So you don't, again, see anything really wonderful that they've received to manage and take care of. This person, however, has the fate, which is Rahu and Ketu, to sort of be the Ashwi person in their family. And they really are. They're always the ones who give what's needed when it's needed. Know how, Ashwins mean. One of them is Nasatya, which is helpful. The other Ashwin is Dashra, which means giving wonderful aid. Well, this is always the person who's fated to do that in their family. Their Rahu and Ketu fate is about giving wonderful aid and being helpful. They helped all their siblings growing up. They helped their limited ability mother. They helped, they helped that. Then they, after everyone was grown up, they're constantly always doing good and helping their siblings when their siblings get in trouble. And again, their siblings aren't as capable, so there's ample opportunity for that. So they really have a role of a helper. Rahu and Ketu are, because they are the important planets in the Dvadasamsa, the critical planets. Then there's the important house lords, but the critical planets are Ketu and Rahu. They represent your ancestral karma more than anything else, and the path you're on in respect to fulfilling the responsibilities and obligations to your ancestors. And for this, she has an Ashwi path, the maintainer, the one who takes care of things when it's necessary, and so on. If Rahu and Ketu are in Ganesha Dvadasamshas, and Rahu and Ketu will always be in the same type of Dvadasamsha. Okay? They're in Ganesha Dvadasamsha, the person has a ancestral mission to do something different, unique. And that'll be a big thing that sticks out compared to their ancestral path. In the Haya Dvadasamsha, they may not actually do that much, but they might really come to terms with their family. Like one client I have who's really into their lineage and learning about all their ancestors and going back and really understanding the whole family. That's a Haya Dvadasamsha example of that. Then the Yada Dvadasamsha, if you've got Rahu and Ketu in the Yama Dvadasamsha, get ready for a lot of fun, because that indicates really dealing with a lot of difficulties in the family life, meaning not your family in the context of your wife and children, but your birth family and the ancestral karma there. It can be really intense and turbulent, require a lot of discipline and control to get through and to make the most of. If Rahu and Ketu are good, there can be some great stresses and unusual situations, but those would lead to positive and productive things. Okay? So, we probably should have looked at those Dvadasamshas of the Rahu and Ketu more in the other charts we looked at, but that pretty much sums it up. Do look at those Dvadasamshas of Rahu and Ketu. I usually don't pay that much attention to the deities of Rahu and Ketu and the other Vargas. You've probably noticed that. So oftentimes I forget to look at the Dvadasamshas of Rahu and Ketu first to see their deities. In the other planets, in the other Vargas, when I look at the deities, say of the Navamsha, the first planet I'll look at is Venus. If I'm looking at the deities in the Drakana, the first planet I look to is Mars, because that's the key planet in the Drakana. Because I'm out of the habit of looking at Rahu and Ketu's deities, I tend to not look at that first in the Dvadasamsha, but I really should. The first deity you should look at in the Dvadasamsha is the deity of Rahu and Ketu. Okay? Alright, I think that's enough Dvadasamsha examples. The next batch of classes are going to finalize this Varga class. The first Varga class, we're going to cover Vargas 1 through 12. And we're going to summarize in those. That's in many ways going to be the most important part of the class from a predictive, hands-on use part of view, especially from a predictive point of view, where we'll integrate using the charts together, which is really what you always need to do. Because remember, when you say the sun's in Leo, like it is in this chart, You're never really saying that. What you're really saying is the sun's in Leo in the Rashi chart. It's in Taurus in the Dvadasamsa chart. It's in Aquarius in the Hora. It's in Aries in the Drekana. It's in Scorpio in the Navamsha. It's in Capricorn in the Septamsha. And it's Aries in the Dasamsha. And it's Taurus in the Chatursamsha, the fourth Varga. That's what you're really saying when you say the planet's here. So never look at a planet as being in a sign. Look at a planet as being in a specific part of space with means many, many different signs affecting that planet through all the different Vargas. We're going to sum up with Vargas 1 through 12 before we get into Vargas 16 to 60. Because those are the ones you'll use the most. You can be most confident with the timing. Those ones are not as changeable due to wrong birth time. And it'll be a good place to sort of take, to do that now. And then we'll do a summary course classes after we finish all 60 Vargas too, or Vargas, 16 to 60. But Vargas 1 through 12 are a group of Vargas within themselves. They are the group of Vargas of, the concrete manifestations with all their varying details. They're the deha, the actual body of things that you have in your life. Okay? All right. That should do it for now. Thank you.